And I'm delighted to say that Adam Smith joins us once again on the line. Adam is a lifelong Red who writes on all things LFC under the banner And Could He Play? Adam, it's really good to talk to you once again.
Yeah, nice to speak to you. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. And I have to say, by this time next week, we're going to be chewing the fat over Liverpool's first Premier League game of the new season. And, of course, it's a game as well, Adam, that's going to herald the dawn of a new era at Liverpool, of course, with Arne Slot as the new head coach. It's clearly been a quiet summer so far in terms of transfer activity, but in terms of your expectations, Adam, how are you approaching the new season?
Yeah, it has been a quiet summer, but I think that's to be expected, really, because the new manager is going to want to have a look at the squad, going to want to assess it for his own purposes and see who he thinks he can work with and who he thinks might need to be upgraded upon. So that was always going to be the case at the start, and in his first press conference he did it alongside Richard Hughes, who's in charge of the transfers, and Richard Hughes literally said nothing will really happen till August. So I don't really know why so many fans are annoyed that nothing's really happened until August, because it was spelled out for them by the guy who's in charge of doing the transfers. And I think, how am I feeling about the new season? Excited, actually, because I think Jurgen Klopp was a legend at Liverpool. He will always be remembered as a legend, as one of the club's best ever managers. That can't be taken away from him. And during any other era, he probably would have won 3 or 4 Premier League titles instead of just one. But unfortunately, he happened to be around during the era of Manchester City, who of course have those 115 charges still hanging over them. So who knows what that might do in the future. But at the same time, the fact that Man City were there and what happened means that Jurgen Klopp didn't win more Premier League titles, didn't win more Champions Leagues. So there is something to be improved upon. And Arne Slot very clearly does not have the same, I'm going to say charisma, although that might be me being a little bit unfair, but he certainly doesn't have the same verve as Jurgen Klopp in terms of being able to pick out a one-liner, the normal one and all those sorts of things that the previous manager was excellent at. But there is something to be improved upon from what Klopp did during his time at Liverpool, and you could be somebody without the charisma but with all the footballing knowledge, and it might just be that he's at Anfield at a more fortuitous time in terms of what happens with Manchester City. Maybe Pep Guardiola leaves, maybe something happens with the 115 charges, maybe what's going on at Arsenal was a bit of a flash in the pan and they drop away a little bit. There's any number of things that could happen. So I'm excited to see how things pan out across the season.
Well, this is it, and it's a good point you make about Arne Slot, because we didn't really get to learn much about him during the pre-season tour of the United States. I think he chose to watch a baseball game rather than give interviews, for example, and he took part in only one pre-match news conference. But, the players, it's got to be said, Adam, they seem to be enjoying playing a new style of football under Arne Slot.
Yeah, it's something that happens in life, isn't it, boys? People will often say a change is as good as a rest. And sometimes you just hear the same message too many times from somebody. And I think one of the things that Alex Ferguson was underrated for during his time at Manchester United was how often he changed as assistant manager. So the voice that the players were hearing would change, would alter, would be something different all the time. And Jurgen Klopp didn't really do that. He obviously worked, Buvac left and they brought in Pep Lijnders, but otherwise there weren't huge changes in the backroom staff for Liverpool. And so just a new voice telling you something different and maybe giving you a different approach can liven things up. And certainly from what Curtis Jones seemed to be saying when he was interviewed in the pre-season, he seemed to be really excited about the idea of the way that Slot was asking them to play, because that he felt that played into his hands a little bit more. There might be some players that feel the opposite of that, but there will be other players who agree with him and feel invigorated by the new manager's arrival and what he's telling them to do. So it's something to be excited about, I think.
And I think it was Harvey Elliott who described Slot's style of play as elegant, because we're used to, as you say, Klopp's heavy metal football, but Harvey Elliott said that it was elegant football. And you mentioned Curtis Jones and the likes of Jarrell Quansah and also Harvey Elliott as well. And as you say, they could be among the players who enjoy the more possession-heavy approach of football with shorter passes and maybe more interchanging of positions as well.
Absolutely. One of the things I read about Slot was that he saw himself effectively as a bit of a crossover between Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola, where he wanted Klopp's killer instinct but Pep's control of the football match, and that might be really quite exciting to watch, and definitely some of the players that are in the team are going to be more inclined to find that way of playing is one that they feel works better for their style of football. The manager, the old manager, well, I suppose I can say the manager because Slot has been given the title of head coach, so the former manager said at the end of the season that maybe he should have played Harvey Elliott a bit more, and I feel from his pre-season performances that won't be a mistake that Slot will be making. So there'll be some players like Elliott, as you say, like Jones and others that are really keen to get the teeth into this new style of football and put it up against a Premier League level opposition. And yes, okay, Ipswich are one of the promoted teams, and they went on one hell of a run towards the end of the season to get that promotion, but they are at the Premier League level now, so Liverpool need to be careful not to fall into the trap of just assuming they'll win because it's a promoted team, and it'll be interesting to see how Slot's method works.
And we know for sure as well, Adam, that there's going to be many observers scrutinising Liverpool's performances this season. And of course, a lot of the talk is going to be about Arne Slot. But I think it was John Barnes who said on the US tour a couple of weeks ago, he said, in many respects, it's more about the players adapting to the manager.
Yeah, and look, I think that's why Slot probably, as you say, went and watched a football match rather than did a pre-season press conference, because he will have wanted to just take himself out of things a little bit. He knows the scrutiny he's going to be under once the season gets underway, so why put himself under it unnecessarily during the pre-season? He'll want to keep himself out of the picture, and I think he'll also want just Jurgen Klopp was a ginormous figure that still looms large over Liverpool, and Slot will be aware that if things don't start well for him, people will be saying, "Oh, what a shame Jurgen left," etc. What he'll want to do is he'll want to make sure that after the first few games of the season, that the most people are saying is Jurgen who, and the best way that can happen is that the players step up to the plate and deliver what he's asking of them. Now, we'll only know whether what he's asking of them is right in the long term. So we have to wait and see. But in the short term, what we want to see the players do is step up to the plate and deliver what the manager's asking of them. So that's the key test, I think, early doors. And
I think as well it would appear, Adam, that Arne Slot has already set his expectations very high because, you know, it was a really good pre-season for Liverpool in the United States. 3 wins from 3. They comfortably beat Manchester United 3-0 last weekend. And yet, despite that 3-0 win for Liverpool, Arne Slot said that he felt that his side could have controlled the game better. So despite that 3-0 win over Manchester United, Slot saying, well, do you know what? We could have done better than that. Expectations are going to be really high this season.
And they should be. There should be no lowering of expectations just because there's been a change of manager, because most of the players that were there, all of the players that were there previously, because we haven't signed anybody new yet, so all of the players that were there previously are still there. They know what that level of expectation was, and let's not forget that up until late in the season, there was a dream, however slight, that Liverpool could look to do a quadruple. So that we can't suddenly go, oh, well, the manager's changed, therefore everything's going to fall apart and we should be lucky to finish fourth. That won't be what Arne Slot is saying to his players, and that's not what the supporters should say either. Now, that's not to say that we should lose our heads if Liverpool struggle to maintain a real drive for the top spot as the season goes on. But I also don't think that we should be going into it with our tails between our legs and saying, oh, well, it'll take us a while for the manager to get going. The people behind the decisions at Anfield have deliberately picked Arne Slot because of how few changes to the playing style there will be. So it's a real chance for Liverpool to put the foot on the gas and see where we end up. And we've got some very favourable fixtures early on.
We have indeed. And also significantly as well, Adam, Liverpool are about to begin a season in which Trent Mo Salah and also Van Dijk are all entering the final year of their respective contracts. Now, I think Liverpool fans are somewhat divided between those who say that these players should move on amicably and Liverpool should take advantage of their sell-on value, or actually whether new contracts should be offered to those players. Where do you sit in terms of the likes of Trent, Mo Salah and Van Dijk, and whether they should extend their contracts and stay with Liverpool?
I think it's going to be a big season for Mo Salah. We know he's incredibly fit. He looks after himself very, very well. I think last season he suffered a little bit with the injury that he picked up at the African Cup of Nations. And now we're in a position where he's had a good summer to pre-season. He doesn't get that very often, but Egypt haven't been in a tournament or anything, so he's been able to work hard. Virgil van Dijk has obviously been away with Holland, so he might be a little bit tired, but I think he'll still be keen to come back in and prove himself to be the top defender that he is. I mean, I think even last season he was back to his best and was one of the best in the league. He maybe doesn't have another 5 years in him, but he probably has another 2 or 3 at the top level. So I'd like to see both of them given a contract extension, even if only a 1 year or 2 year deal. For Trent Alexander-Arnold, I think he's going to be the captain, the future captain of Liverpool Football Club, and if he's going to do that, he obviously needs to stay at Liverpool Football Club. So I think he will. I think he'll be offered a long-term contract, and I think he'll sign a long-term contract. So that's my instinct, is that he gets a long-term one and signs it, and the others get a short-term one and sign that. That's where I think things will come down. But obviously, the guys with the all of the data might be looking and saying, well, actually, Mo's dropped off a little bit this year, and Virgil isn't doing what he's done before. So the people with the data, I am confident they know what they're doing. So I'm not overly worried whatever happens, to be honest.
Well, we will see in the next few weeks as to what may develop in terms of that. Of course, Liverpool fans, Adam, getting a little bit excited about the potential to sign the Spain midfielder Martin Zubimendi. The 25-year-old, I believe, has a release clause of 60 million euros. That would need to be paid in one full instalment if Liverpool were to activate it. I believe that Liverpool are discussing the structure of any deal with his existing club. And of course, any move to Anfield will also depend on Zubimendi's decision. In terms of this potential signing, I mean, clearly he would be a great signing for Liverpool, no doubt. But do you think this is a deal that will get over the line?
I think it will. I think it will, because I think the club don't tend to let information like this slip out unless they're confident that something's going to get done. So I don't think we'd know about it if the club wasn't confident. So I think we're at the point now where it's really about the two teams, can they reach an agreement? And that's what's stalling it. And we're filling the time as supporters who are saying, oh, maybe he won't, maybe he doesn't want to leave, maybe he wants to stay in the area. I think as a player, I think he knows that he's achieved all he can achieve with Real Sociedad. So it's a matter of saying, okay, well, I'm going to need to move on now, and maybe Liverpool is the club to move on to, because the likes of Arsenal, who've been interested in him, Manchester United, who've been interested in him, none of them have the same family feel, I would say, for want of a less cliched term, that Liverpool offers. And of course the Xabi Alonso link, where he's able to speak to his former mentor and say, what's Liverpool like for Spanish players? And I think that Alonso would absolutely sing the praises of the city and the club on that front. So I think it will happen. I think it's just more about the clubs agreeing how much it's going to cost and what they will agree to accept, and what Liverpool would agree to pay. They could just trigger the thing, but I think that there will be a desire there to maybe find a different way of making an agreement. Look, transfers are very, very complicated things. There is always a world in which Zubimendi decides, no, actually, I'm going to stick around for another year. I want to see if I can get the club back in the Champions League, etc. But my instinct is that it will get done, and we wouldn't know about it if they didn't already have effectively the nod and the wink from the player's agent to say, yeah, he'll come if you can agree a fee.
And as I say, a lot of Liverpool fans, Adam, getting excited about this, although we should say that, Liverpool are clearly not lacking in holding midfielders, are they? Because Alexis McAllister and also Endo shared the responsibility of that position last season in midfield. But it looks like Slot just wants something new.
Yeah, I think it's something new, but I also think he wants a specialist in the role, and I think that's what Endo is. But I think he's a little bit maybe past his best, if I can say that. And I also think he was a player who filled in the position last season, did a really good job, was a great performer. But I don't think anybody, including the player himself, would mind if he was to move on this summer, go somewhere else and be a little bit more comfortable in the position that's asked of him. And McAllister, he's not a holding midfielder. That's not what he's very good at. He's better further forward. And I think if you can bring somebody in who is a specialist in the role, which Zubimendi has proven himself to be, and he can effectively anchor that midfield, then you can say to the likes of Alexis McAllister, Dom Szoboszlai, Curtis Jones, you go forward, you express yourself a little bit more, drop back and help out if needed, but we've got this guy who can help protect the defence in a significantly more mobile and useful way than I think Endo was able to do.